Welcome to the Lonely Marketers Podcast. In this episode, I'm talking to Zanaba Poland, the marketing manager at Gillespie Manners Search Selection. Zanaba actually started a career as a recruiter, and then she left the industry to start a marketing career. She's now pivoted and come back full circle to become a recruitment marketer. Zanaba's got a refreshing outlook on recruitment marketing and sees it as a forgiving industry where marketers can take more risks than in other sectors. She talks about navigating being a lonely marketer and how to reap the benefits of using freelancers and marketing agencies to collaborate and become less lonely in the day-to-day. Let's get listening. So Zanaba, welcome. Thanks for joining me for a chat today. We're going to talk about recruitment marketing, but what I'm really looking forward to, given 2 years now into a recruitment marketing role?
About 2.5,
But quite a lot of prior marketing experience, So what I always find interesting about guests that have got that varied marketing backgrounds, my first question tends to be what the similarities and differences are. So give me a breakdown. But mainly what we're looking to dig out is, are we just a weird industry, or is there similarities with others out there?
There's a lot of differences. I mean, in terms of the whole lonely marketers aspect, obviously most of the time you're either a one-person team or you've got, maybe to a point where you've grown a couple of people underneath you, but you're always going to have that sort of direct level of reporting into a co-founder, into a managing director, or into a sales director. It's always going to be very top heavy exposure at that side of the business. And that's what I never had in my previous roles. It was always very much you're in your little area, you're in a big business, or, you're a specialist in one area and you've got your, you are just focused purely on that one space. You don't have broader exposure to the strategy, to the different problems that arise and the different aspects of the business. So I think that's probably the biggest one for me. And then budget is a huge one as well. There's, a lot of variance, I think, in the kind of investment that gets afforded to marketing and recruitment. But typically you're going to have much lower levels of resources to be working with. And that's definitely a big challenge to kind of overcome, especially if you're coming from a corporate background where you're used to playing with budgets in the hundreds of thousands up to the millions. And then you're suddenly in an environment where you're, it's a bit more penny pinching, it's a bit more DIY, and the onus is on you to really fight for every penny that you spend. And there is real need to demonstrate ROI and to gradually get buy-in and try and scale things up. But that being said, I do think that there are similarities between recruitment marketing and just sort of general B2B kind of service-based startup kind of environments, in that it's a little bit more insular. You've got, as I say, startup environments typically reporting into a founder or a C-suite executive, smaller teams. I think we experience quite a lot of the same struggles that more general B2B marketers do in terms of the buy-in, the budgets, the demonstrating the use case of what is marketing, and feeling kind of have to fight a little bit for your function and pioneer it in a way as well.
There's some really interesting stuff there. The two bits I want to dig into a bit more is you've kind of touched on a lot of stuff that many listeners will experience, but they won't have seen the other side. So a lot of recruitment marketers will have got a job as a assistant, maybe exec level, and they might have been the first marketer, which is always back to the front, but we often experience it. And they learn that scenario you've described on the job without other industry or prior experience. Your voice sounded quite positive about that. I'd usually found it quite interesting if you've come from that corporate environment where budgets are not necessarily a given at the level you want, but there is a budget. You're in a function that has some strategic direction, and that kind of sits within a business structure and a business strategy. They're the rare bits, but you sound quite positive about that. I just want to understand, has that been refreshing, just different? Why are you not seeing that as a negative, as I suppose many would?
obviously there are negatives to it. I'm not going to lie. It's definitely not all like sunshine and roses, but
Yeah.
I do think it gives you much more opportunity and much more power in a way, because
Okay.
if the onus is on you to prove the use case for marketing and to demonstrate the ROI, it is ultimately within your power. Whereas if you're in a bigger corporate environment, you've got so many layers of like red tape and bureaucracy that might get in the way. Or even if you've got a great idea and you know something will work, there'll be someone 8 layers above you that has a reason that it won't work, that they can't necessarily, you won't get to have that one-on-one dialogue with them to explain why. It'll just be like no, you reached the limit on this, it's not happening. Whereas typically I think in recruitment marketing, and definitely in my experience, even if you come up against like a no or a not now, that's not a definitive never. You've still got the power to influence and to impact that. And I think it does require a bit of more of like an entrepreneurial kind of mindset to work in recruitment marketing in general. And if you want to kind of build out your career and see that progression, opportunities are like, I think, so much more significant than in a big corporate environment. Not to say, obviously there's pros and cons to both, but if you're looking for like the progression and you want to make your own way and carve out your own function sort of pathway, I think recruitment marketing offers so many benefits that maybe we in the day-to-day kind of, when you're, in the trenches and you're dealing with the salespeople and you're dealing with the, types of personalities that work in recruitment and the barriers you come up against, maybe we can lose like some of the positives and some of the like the great aspects, like the progression and opportunities to advance yourself, that kind of thing.
Yeah, that's good, and I think it's really refreshing to hear it from someone who's had the other experience. My career journey was quite inward. I started as an assistant in recruitment marketing and moved on through a very typical career path. I've been fortunate enough to see what you've described, progression, and done it, but it's validating to hear someone from outside, because sometimes it is rose-tinted glasses. You think, oh, is this just a struggle because it's recruitment? Actually, other industries see it the same. The second bit I want to kind of scrutinize a bit more and chat through is it sounded like you've got a level of clarity on the business of strategy and how marketing plays a part of that. Other recruitment marketers, I dare say, that are listening, that's a big bugbear, especially at a manager level, is often a recruit, and this is stereotyping, but often a recruitment company doesn't know what their own business strategy is. It's get bigger, and that's about it. Is it that you've used your experience to tease out that information from your business leaders, your founder, or is it that they're quite forthcoming and say, this is what we're looking to do, this is the plan, what can you do as a marketer to back that and help us get it where we're going?
Yeah, I think it's a little bit of both on that. And I think part of it, from my experience, has been more sort of like fighting for my seat at the table when those decisions are being made, and seeing that, or, being quite direct with the leaders in the business and saying, if you want marketing to impact on the strategy and to drive meaningful results, then it needs to be part of the conversation when you're sort of directing those top level strategic decisions. It be sort of an afterthought, and we need to work together to make the strategy align with the marketing, with the sales, and with the day-to-day kind of delivery of the roles. So I think it's a little bit of both, in that it will, I think always within the industry, it's going to default to, we want to scale, we want to get bigger, but you kind of have to tease out a little bit, that in terms of getting clear objectives, you will need to tease that out more. And in terms of how you then apply that to the marketing and get the buy-in to it, I think just being really clear on like, this is the process, this is how we set out a marketing plan that makes sense and is attached to the business strategy. And you're not always going to get buy-in on that straight away. But I think if you sort of commit to the longer term journey and the small wins along the way, like if you can demonstrate one example of how, if you've aligned something to a broader strategic objective and you're seeing a few results there, then you've got more of a use case for, to be included in those conversations that are happening, and to just be involved in the highest level that you can get yourself into. Sometimes it will feel like you're kind of knocking on the door and saying, hello, please let me in.
Yeah.
When it comes to talking, dealing with the board of directors, if you've got one, trying to fight for that and sort of get your way into there.
It's a hard balance, isn't it? Because you can, and I've been in both of these positions at different stages of my career, where it's like, how can you expect me to do the best if you're not telling me what the business is doing?
Yeah.
And then the flip side of that is getting to the point in your career where you're confident enough to force that issue and say, I need to know this. Because sitting there and thinking, how can I know to do this? It gives you two choices. You either build the confidence and go and knock on that door, or you move on and get a job where someone's going to say to you, here's the direction, here's the strategy, and everything else.
Yeah.
That comes with an interesting balance. If you find an employer or a business that does that, the weight of expectations is going to be much higher, because they're basically saying to you, here is everything you need.
Yeah.
Go and do a great job. So I do think we have to sometimes be cautious. If you can find that middle ground of knocking on the door, getting an ear, and then proving your value, I think you can then work in tandem and help evolve the business's view on marketing.
Yeah.
Is that something in your 2 years you feel like you've kind of fit that nicely, where they've got a bit of a marketing idea, or it can play a part, they're convinced, they just need someone with a level of experience to make it happen?
Yeah, and I think it's that, like, often in recruitment, I think people will say, okay, we're at the point now where we need to invest in marketing in some form. Maybe we need to get our brand to a good position. Maybe we've realized that our website isn't looking very good. Maybe we want to drive more inbound leads, but we just don't know what that looks like. And so they'll have a sense that they need a marketing function, but without having any real experience, without having ever had anyone in a marketing capacity before, they kind of don't really know what they're looking for. So they need someone to come in and be able to steer the ship a little bit. And it is that kind of give and take, push and pull between sort of wedging your foot in the door and trying to get yourself involved in those strategic conversations, but also being able to kind of shape those as they're happening. Because like you say, if you've got a strategy dictated to you in that sense, it does push you into a bit of a corner in terms of you've been given all of the information to go off and make a plan work in theory, but unless you're involved in that and you're an active participant in it, there's, you're limited in terms of how much you can actually impact.
Yeah, it's really interesting, isn't it? It sounds like there's progress being made. So what appealed to you about, was it the job, the company, the industry, or a mix? What were your thoughts when thinking about entering this sector? Was it something, did you do any research into what it's like to be a marketer in the sector? It's quite tough to find that information, I guess.
Yeah, so I guess something that isn't like publicly on my CV or on my LinkedIn is that my very first job out of university was recruitment. And it wasn't something that lasted particularly long, I'm going to be honest. It was one of those panicked decisions of, oh my God, I'm graduating. Everyone says you can't get a job in marketing. Like, it's really hard out here. I knew someone that worked in a recruitment company, not as a recruiter, but in sort of a different capacity. And they got me a job in their business, essentially. And then I had kind of the big realization whilst I was doing that, oh God, I don't think I can be a recruiter. I don't think this is for me. I don't think I can handle the cold calling and the sort of the extreme sales environment. But I kind of appreciate the environment at the same time. Whilst I don't want to play this role in it, I was looking at the person that worked in marketing at that business at the time and thinking, okay, how do I get there? And that was never, I wouldn't say it was like my plan all along to eventually get back into recruitment marketing, but it was in the back of my mind. And it was, okay, I've seen the recruitment environment and I know that looks really interesting and it looks promising. And now I'm going to go off and actually work on my marketing career. And it was always in the back of my mind that I might be interested in getting into that. And then a kind of an opportunity presented itself again, because I sort of knew someone that was working in this business, the recruitment business I work for at the moment. And they were at the point where they'd never invested in marketing in any form, really. And they'd been established for about 17 years at the time. And never, no marketing spend really beyond like a very basic website and a sort of scrambled together logo. But they knew that in order to get to the next phase of their growth, it was the time to invest. again, they weren't sure what that looked like exactly. So it was kind of an opportunity to come in, shape the role, shape the function, and go in the direction that I kind of wanted to with it. And because of my previous experience in a recruitment environment, I did kind of know let's say I was prepared for the ups and downs and the highs and the lows of like a recruitment environment. So it wasn't
all a big shock.
Yeah, I didn't go into it blindly. But I also had limited knowledge, I suppose, at the time of how to take my corporate marketing experience and apply it to a recruitment environment, because it's a very different business context. And I think that's something you kind of will get to grips with as you do it and as you go. You can't really look to theory. You can't really look at academia for recruitment marketing, because it's not like it's, I think we're kind of still at
no one's written the book yet.
Marketing.
No one's written the book.
Yeah, exactly.
Which I've got planted seeds of ideas with TLM for us all to contribute to the book.
Yeah. It wouldn't be a bad idea, but we're definitely all sort of navigating it as we go. We're trying to pioneer it in a way. And that's where community is really important, in the sharing the ideas and the things that work and the things that don't. And as lonely marketers, just trying to come together in some way and go like, hey, like, you're not alone. You're not crazy to be feeling a bit lost or confused, because ultimately it's a difficult territory to navigate and get your head around. So I don't think I went into it completely blind, but I think it's difficult to go into it prepared at the same time, is what I'll say. And if you're considering like, if it's your first role and you're considering a recruitment marketing role as your first step in your career, I think that would be a little bit of a daunting thing, but it's also, I think, got the best potential to like grow your career. And there's no better way to build up the experience than to just throw yourself in at the deep end at a business that, doesn't really know what it's doing in terms of marketing, and figure it out for yourself and learn along the way.
Yeah, I'd back that up with people listening who might not be in a position you are, where you've got trust, you've got buy-in, the business knows it needs marketing and knows it needs to listen to a marketer as to taking it from that. We've never invested, we've got a bit of a website, got a logo, we need a marketer to steer us. There's probably listeners that are thinking, I wish I had that, because I'm sat in a recruitment business that only went as far as I know I need marketing. But then once you're on the job, everything feels like a closed door. The gut is probably, let me get out of recruitment marketing. But what I'd implore listeners to think about is, there's probably a lot more recruitment companies out there now that are of the mindset of the second and third steps. We need to listen to the marketer rather than just we need the marketer.
Yeah.
And given what you said about having an insight into how the world works, one of the biggest wins you would have as that, let's say, second job recruitment marketer, you can take all that understanding of the nuance of weirdness the industry brings about. So don't jump straight out of the industry. That's the mistake I made. I jumped out and went into the legal industry and lasted 10 months and got straight back into recruitment marketing because you could get things done. So it's not necessarily the industry sometimes, it's finding the right employer within the industry.
I think the grass is always going to be greener as well. And, you've got massive issues to face in different industries. Like if you work I did financial services marketing for quite a while, and the red tape in that industry is crazy. If you want to send out any email basically to anyone, you've got like a 10-week legal time frame for review, and like 4 months of approvals from every different stakeholder you can imagine. And on the other hand, in recruitment, you get things done fast, and it's that's what recruitment leaders want. Is they want people that can when an idea has been come up with, that they can just implement it sort of straight away and they can get on it. So that's
a real positive for the industry, isn't it? It sounds daft saying it this way, but lack of regulation, lack of red tape, and arguably the reputations to candidates isn't amazing. So if a marketer comes in and tries new things, two things, they're not really going to annoy anyone because that's already been done. And they can fail fast. So you can get something off the ground, you can test it, and if it doesn't work, like you said, prove concepts, but also my view is sometimes get the evidence to say that crazy ideas from founders aren't the right ideas. Sometimes you
Yeah.
can stand there and say, that's not going to work, but actually follow through, do it, and show them the data and show them it doesn't work. In other industries, what you're saying is, you want to test something, good luck, because you're going to be waiting a long time and you're going to have to do a lot of negotiating with legal people.
It's very forgiving.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. The forgiving industry rather than the pain in the arse industry. I do want to talk about your previous roles, I'm going to say. It looks to me from your LinkedIn profile like it's one company, but within that company, you've serviced several different industries. Like to hear about the experience and difference between the different industries. Can you just sum up what that role or roles throughout that stage of your career entailed? Because I think people will be really interested in that. It looks interesting.
Yeah, looking back, it was quite an interesting journey and career path to get started on. So it's a very big business and it's currently American owned. But when I joined the business, it was a small sort of, it was literally called grassroots. It was a grassroots type business, and that's what it was called. And I joined it at a time where it was evolving quite a lot. So when I came in, it was essentially a marketing agency, was what I was part of. And I was working as a B2B account, like a junior marketing account manager, fully retained on a Volkswagen account. That was, an automotive industry marketing area. And it was kind of a very interesting product to market as the first thing that you market coming out of university, because it was car parts that we were selling effectively. And I didn't even drive at the time. So I was very limited in my knowledge about oil and, windscreen wipers and all of the rest of it. But it was a great way to kind of build up my, hone the craft as a marketer of how do you market something that either isn't really exciting to you, but might be to a certain audience. And how do you get your head around a brand new concept to you and get into the right mindset of being able to sell it in a convincing way, which is basically research. And that I think was helpful later in my career as, joining the Gillespie Manners team and applying that to a recruitment environment. And then, I had a couple of different roles there. I moved into the Barclays team, again, working as a marketing account manager there for Barclays.
Like marketing into banking sector, taking some of Barclays products to other financial B2B buyers.
That was actually a B2C role.
Switched
it up from B2B then to B2C. And that was working on the Premier Rewards app, which, it was basically if you've got a Premier account, then you get a rewards app that you get access to, and it was relationship marketing, so it was trying to drive usage of the app and the rewards that they got, and effectively trying to increase the customer value and retention from their Premier banking segment. So a very different move. The similarities were that it was kind of focused on email marketing, which has been like a thread throughout my career, and quite different, but similar in a little way. And it was interesting as my first two roles to have the exposure to two massive businesses, to Volkswagen and to Barclays, that operate in, that very bureaucratic red tape kind of way that I mentioned.
Both things have to be right?
Yeah.
You
significant. Like huge, legal approval processes and so many different stakeholders and really big budgets that they're working with. Obviously, they're paying for your services as part of that, but in some cases you have, like working with Volkswagen, we had control over a print budget which was almost £1 million a year, which is pretty significant for
eye-watering to some.
Obviously, for anyone currently working in recruitment listening to that, just sort of,
I think we'd struggle to know what to do with it. We'd be like, we want a budget. But if someone actually give you a spreadsheet and that was the budget, it could be quite scary.
Be overwhelming, which is why I think it's important to always try and scale up if you can. If, don't go in there and demand a huge budget straight away, because you won't know what to do with it, to be honest. And then at that point, Black Hawk Network, which is who I worked for at the time, they had a bit of a shift in business strategy and they moved away from servicing clients in that same way. And I moved into their marketing team doing an internal marketing role, and it was product marketing for a cashback card. So still kind of in the financial services realm. And again, dealing with those, financial services requirements and legalities and all the footnotes.
But it sounds like a lot of like loyalty and ensuring life cycle of customer is kept over the long term, which is something I think the recruitment. So there's two. I keep going off on two things every time you say something, but there's two really interesting ones in that. The loyalty thing, which I think we're crap at as an industry in the main. So you win a client, fill a job, don't follow up because you filled the job. That is a bizarre scenario. So loyalty could be something that is huge in this industry and make a big difference. But then that, like, loads of people who get into recruitment marketing are like almost like overwhelmed by the fact that it's B2B and B2C. I think that must have stood you in good stead, really, like having that transfer within your career from one to the other. So you've got that sector transfer, you've automotive into finance, banking, but also B2B, B2C split. Overlaid with that loyalty thing must plant seeds of ideas when you look at recruitment business and go, you're missing a lot of tricks here. Why is this industry not doing it like that? What do you think you could take from that and implement? And are the things you've started to transfer across to the current role?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of, like, I don't want to call them easy wins in recruitment, because again, if you don't have that knowledge, then you don't know what to do. You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah.
But I would definitely say that we don't give enough, or don't sort of put enough onus on the life cycles and sort of plotting out the journey touch points for both candidates and clients. And it can be a little bit narrow-minded, the focus of, okay, as you say, we've placed that role now, and then that's sort of it, close the book. But making sure that you have the touch points in place after that journey, because ultimately, if you've just placed a role for somebody, what are the chances they're going to be hiring again in the next 6 weeks? Low. But what's the chances in the next year getting higher? So making sure that you remain, top of their mind and they have that brand salience. I think that's a trick that's often missed. And equally on the candidate side, a big focus for us, because we have quite a lot of overlap with our candidates and our clients, aren't necessarily distinct audiences because of the level of role that we place at, which is mid to senior. So we're typically hiring people that have either leadership or management responsibilities, which means that if we place them, and especially if we place them in like a first on the ground type of role and they're building out their own function, there's a high likelihood that they'll be in a position to hire for themselves in the next 6 months to a year. So plotting out those customer journeys is something I feel that probably isn't done very widely, and really getting to grips with, okay, what is the entire life cycle from when someone comes to us as a candidate to when we place them to when they are then growing their own team, when they need to start hiring, and how do we insert ourselves into those journeys more and remain kind of constantly top of their mind as much as we can. And I do think it sort of harks back to the relationship marketing experience that I've got, which is you need to be delivering something of value throughout that whole life cycle. So
to increase the chances that more customers are going to see that journey and that life cycle through.
Yeah, exactly. And anything you can do to try and retain a client once you've got them is going to be much more cost effective than trying to win brand new clients from scratch and get those net new wins in. So I think that's definitely still a big focus for what we're doing in marketing at Gillespie Manners. I wouldn't say we're at like a golden standard of what you should do, because I think everyone's always growing and working towards, better.
Yeah, I don't think there is a perfect, is there? But the fact that you've got that motion and you're thinking about it is a differentiator, in my opinion. I think marketers, if we try and do it at recruitment businesses, I think what I've experienced in the past is a marketer would put a customer journey map together that to the sales organization would look too long-winded. Because when they get a win, it tends to be the best case scenario, i.e. the person they call happens to need a role filling, gives it to them, they fill it, and it's done. And they're like, why do we have to plot this 6-month journey out when we can get people done in 6 weeks, 6 days? And I think that's the challenge, isn't it? You don't end up drawing the map because you get resistance to it. It doesn't have to be this long-winded. And what we're trying to say as marketers, if you plot the map, the chances of more people going through it at different time frames is what will compound your wins.
Yeah.
So I'm with you on that. I think you still got to draw the map. You've got to plot it out and tell the salespeople, look, we can help you at each stage. If your usual 6-day scenario still happens, great. But that won't happen with everyone, right?
Exactly. It's about everyone that falls through the gaps that you don't capture or happen to get lucky with. It's like they don't just cease existing. They're still out there and they'll still have a need arise at some point. So how do we make sure we're there and they come to us when that happens? And that's, I think, the biggest opportunity for any recruitment exec search firm out there is plotting those journeys properly and making sure they've got the right touch points in place along that. Because I think, it's like I think it's fairly well known to most salespeople that it takes a number of touch points before you get to the consideration phase. But I think maybe they consider, or, might revert to considering that all of those touch points are sales touch points. Yeah. Which I don't think is, we need to look beyond that and we need to think about how we can give
That's heavy lifting, isn't
value.
it? If you've got to have 30 touch, I don't know what the usual number is now, but it's way more than 7. If you've got to have 30 touch points and the salesperson's got to do all them, that's heavy lifting, isn't it? So it doesn't really make sense, especially when we'll know that different people are at different stages and some of the touch points needs to happen way ahead of the time they need to hire someone or they need to find a job.
Yeah. And I think in terms of getting the buy-in, with the salespeople that I work with, part of that messaging has been around, look, you focus on these quick win, high priority people that we know will either have a need or are more likely to buy from us now. And don't even worry about all those, hundreds and thousands of other people. Like, don't worry about wasting your time on those at the minute. I'll look after them so that they'll come to you when the time's right. And it's a bit of a basic sell into them, but it does allow them to go, okay, I'll look at this list and I'll just focus on that. And she's looking after all of the others, so I don't need to worry about them just now. And it's more of a, sell it as, when you're selling to salespeople, you always have to, put forward the argument that this will make you the money now. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a weird skill to have, is to market ourselves and to sell ourselves internally. And it does go back to that knocking on the door a little bit. I think marketers, I don't think you can be a good marketer if you can't market yourself. And that's something I learned, where if you are a little bit, it can be tough, this one, because I'd say there's a trend where we tend to be more introverted than our sales colleagues, and that can be quite intimidating. But I've recommended that to a few people. You have to be able to show your value to these people to earn their trust, because if you said, I'll take care of the wider audience, the top of the funnel, however we want to visualize it, you have to have built some trust with them for them to then say, okay, all right, I'll stop the mass mails to these 100,000 people. I know I'm just going to annoy them because I trust you. How do we build that trust as marketers when salespeople can be, let's say, more extroverted and just think, sound bad now, just think they're right?
I think we're lucky in a way that this is one of those problems that isn't unique to recruitment. If you look into any, especially B2B business, you're always going to have that friction between sales and marketing and how you can best align. It is, I think, about like a gradual education and a gradual like raising of the consciousness of what is marketing and how can it support and selling the benefits to them. And sometimes I think, unfortunately, it will just take them literally seeing it win and seeing it work in action.
You have to nurture them like you were nurturing an audience. They're your first audience. Nurture the sales part of your business to see more and more value from you over time. The first time you have a meeting in a new business with a sales leader, why would they just trust everything you say? It's the same principle, right, as marketing to your audience.
Exactly. It's not a quick win. It's kind of a low and a slow, long-term thing that you have to work towards. There's always going to be, like in any business, more early adopters that, buy into the idea more quickly. And I think using them as kind of like influencers for the rest of the business is more powerful, because then they see it from their colleague. They see, oh yeah, they've just said that they had this great example. And, one instance that we had when we started plotting out customer journeys and started to get more communications in place in terms of automations and email marketing and that stuff, is that luckily and thankfully for me, someone that was prospected and cold called actually said on the phone, "Oh yes, you're Gillespie Manners. I've seen this salary guide from you and I saw an article and I thought that was really interesting and really great. And yes, I would like to have a meeting." And then we sent a proposal out. And that was just like the best possible scenario for me, because then that was the use case, and that's the story.
Proved your concept.
Exactly, yeah. And it's the narrative that people then buy into, and the person that had that sales conversation then sort of spread the message, and a few more people were sort of coming to me and asking for support about that and how they can get more involved and how they can get to the point where they're speaking to people on the phone and they already know Gillespie Manners. And it's kind of putting it in more basic terms, I suppose, but you have to, especially as marketers, I think that's the trickiest thing, is trying to convey marketing concepts to salespeople without feeling like you're being very jargony, and it can be easy to slip into that.
Or condescending, I found, like I tried certainly to avoid it, but be on a level with people. And I still work with a sales team, albeit selling a software product into the recruitment sector, and the same thing applies. I've got to build faith with them. I know I couldn't do their job, so you've got to become that partner, haven't you? Essentially, win-win. We've got to work towards that. That's really interesting. I can tell by some of the language you use, you've had that experience of different sectors, and I think listeners will value a lot of what you've said because of that. That said, it sounds like you're pretty lonely. Are you a one-person team? And is that to be the way for a while yet? How do you manage to get everything you do done with limited resource? Do you use any external suppliers? What's the structure?
Yeah, so I am still a lonely marketer in my journey, and I'm definitely a one-person team at the moment. And I think, although it was kind of my ambition originally, when I joined the business, to grow out a function a bit quicker and to hire one or two people, along that journey, I think that ultimately it kind of came down to a decision of like, what is best for the business right now. And I think we are still in a phase of our growth where, although we're en route to where we want to get to, I think ultimately we're still not ready to invest in the kind of significant budgets. I'm talking like 5+% of revenue yearly. We're not quite there yet, because we're on that journey building the use case still. So for me, the growth of the function has been more related to outsourcing things and getting specialist agency support. And I think that's where I see the journey going for the next 1 to 2 years before we invest in the internal resources. Because for me, it's like what's most beneficial to the growth of the marketing function right now is definitely specialist support in things like PR, copywriting, design, the stuff that I can do, but that I have to acknowledge my limitations around and know that whilst I can cobble this together, it won't be as good as if it's done by a professional. And if we at this point were to expand the team rather than look to external specialists and agencies, then I think we'd still be in a situation where we'd have either one kind of specialism or another generalist person who would also be sort of cobbling it together. And I think that's when we look about the growth of a function, I think it's natural to assume that growth looks like hiring a couple of execs or hiring an assistant. But for me, I've definitely had my opinion changed on that a little bit, and I think that I do see it in the future for our function, but I think we've still got a long way to go in terms of getting some of the basics right and then branching out into the specialisms in an effective way and making sure that we're not just sort of DIYing it and half-assing it forever, but that we do have the right people that know what they're doing, essentially. And that's definitely important. That's from a web perspective, definitely from PR, because that's not where I have my expertise. But then also acknowledging the things that you can bring to the role. And for me, that's like, I'll probably never outsource email marketing because I really love email marketing and that's the experience I have. But at the same time, you need to outsource some things and enable you to focus on the broader strategy and the things that you want to specialize into. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. It's a bit of a, saying that I'm going to be a lonely marketer for a little while more. But I guess it's, once you're working with freelancers and agencies anyway, you do become a little bit less lonely anyway, because you've got other people inputting different perspectives and you get the benefit of working in a bigger team, but it's just people that aren't full-time employees, permanent employees of the business.
I think it's a good balance. And it breaks down some walls that maybe more junior marketers think, oh, I want to be a marketing manager. That means I'm going to have people reporting to me. And that can go several different directions. It could be intimidation. I don't really want to manage someone, but I want a senior role. For me, it's not, manager doesn't mean managing people. I think that's a misconception. And I think that flexibility and the ability to progress your brand and stuff by choosing a different partner, or plug and play with the things you need right now. Much like yourself, I've tried it. I can't see relinquishing paid ads. I just want to do it. I want the control. There's too much budget at stake. I'm going to pay someone to spend my budget. Feels weird. And then we've done much like what you're saying. We've brought a couple of people in who've got, I would say, very distinct skill sets, but can still play a part in helping me with the generalist stuff. But then from time to time, we need to get a true specialist freelancer agency. I think it does come with the experience, doesn't it? The more you work, the more you see it doesn't have to be empire building. It's more about strategically delivering what needs delivering. And I think a key skill you're clearly portraying there is the ability to see what's needed and when. And it doesn't always have to be that hire someone, which comes with its own difficulties.
Yeah, there's definitely that as well, because as you say, like, just because you're good at something that you do doesn't mean you can be a good manager. And I think that's
true.
I think being a bit more introspective about that across all industries at all levels would probably be beneficial, because you end up with people in management roles who have suddenly got whole teams, especially in marketing, where, they got to that level because they were a great marketer, but now it's all outsourced to the team and they're struggling to manage the team. So being a bit more self-aware about that, I think, could benefit a lot of different industries. No,
it's good advice for anyone looking for the next step in the career. It doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to have a team of 4 and that might put you off. If you want to manage the strategy and the function, you don't have to be a star player at email, at paid, at all the other stripes within the job. You've just got to know who is that star player, whether they work for you or not. That's interesting. You're obviously, you've derived some value from being in TLM, which is good. It stops you being quite so lonely. But what it also does is give you a bit of exposure to what other recruitment marketers are doing. One of my favorite questions to ask is, what one thing do you see loads of other recruitment marketers or recruitment companies doing with their marketing that you just look at and think, what a waste of time? Why are you bothering with that? I can't believe you all do it. What's the one thing that you just think, give it up? Don't worry about offending people, because
it's a tough one, because the thing that I instinctively want to answer is something that we have done ourselves up until like quite recently. And then I kind of had a moment where I was looking around, I was thinking, I just don't think this is the best use of time and resources. I don't think it's offering the value that we think it is, which is salary guides, which is a very common, popular, form of content marketing in the industry. And I do have to say that I can see its benefits from a candidate perspective, but when it's aimed at prospective clients, I think that's where it's got real limitations. I think you can a lot of the time be doing yourself a bit of a disservice with it. And in terms of the, if we analyze the results we've got from it from a high level perspective, it looks good in terms of the leads that it's been able to generate, but the proportion of those leads that have led to successful outcomes is very low compared to the other channels that we use, and the other sort of lead magnet things that we put out there. So that for me would probably be
the one that you
one thing.
Yeah, I mean, funnily enough, we're about to launch salary survey of recruitment marketers. The purpose is more, it's slightly different. Like we're not we're looking to, it's a community driven thing. We want to inform each other and all try and elevate everyone within the group's pay and reward, because there isn't that information out there. But I get what you're saying. I think in my experience, when I've been tasked to do it when working at a recruitment agency, sometimes the data was a little bit made up, a little bit. Oh yeah, just put 5% on last year's figures and stuff like that. So I think there's an argument to say it can have its place, but it can be done to death. I just feel like the rule of thumb should be if you're going to do it really well and make it a differentiator.
Yeah, exactly. I think it's over relied upon as sort of a go-to tactic in recruitment marketing, because it's just, and it's something that probably a lot of directors and founders will push because they see other people doing it in the industry, but you don't necessarily want to be competing with that much noise. You want to try and do something that stands out from that noise. And I do think there are very positive applications of it in certain instances, but if you feel like you're just getting to a point where you're contributing to a bunch of noise in that space, then you have to look around and go, okay, everyone else is doing this. Is this still something that we want to do? And is it genuinely going to add that value? Because as I say, from a candidate perspective, I can see the value add, but I don't think that when it's targeted at prospective clients, you do get that same value. And I don't think that, if it's not going to resonate with them, spend the time focusing on something that will resonate more. And sometimes you have to go through that and do it yourself to see whether it does actually work for you and you get those results. And I'm sure there will be some recruitment businesses that it works for and they're happy with the results that it drives. But I think for us, we've been on that journey and we've seen that there are much more effective ways for us to personally add value to people. And there's a sort of a broader argument as well about how you use them. And any gated content, I think, is a bit of a divisive subject in marketing, because a lot of people have gone away from gating their content altogether, as part of more of a demand generation strategy. And I think I do have to agree with that, and that in a lot of cases, the gating of content can hold you back more than it's gonna benefit you in terms of delivering that value and offering that interesting content up to your audience. It's always going to come across better if you're just sort of free and open with it than if you hide it behind something. And I do think that a lot of the salary guides I see, and we've done this ourselves, so again, I don't want to
you're speaking from experience though. That's valid, isn't it? You're not just saying I think that looks, you're saying we've done it. It's not that it didn't work, it's more that for the time, effort, investment, other things have worked better. So you're seeing a common trend that everyone does this, but saying, look, you'd be better off spending your time elsewhere.
Yeah, exactly. I do think they can be beneficial, but I would always, going forward, ungate them and make sure they're very targeted and specific, and probably use them more as a candidate tool rather than for the clients.
Yeah. So there might be some, I think our audience is pretty savvy, but the argument for gating and ungating is broad across the marketing industry, whether recruitment marketers are a little bit backed into a corner because everything demands a lead. The difference being, my understanding is, ungate things, let as much of your audience see it and build awareness, and they'll come back to it in time. Now, for me, if you're going to go down that route, you've got to be doing a lot more content value add than just a salary survey. If you just ungate a salary survey and put it out there and expect someone to go, I've seen your salary survey, to measure its value.
It has to be part of the bigger picture, definitely. And you have to have the things in place to be able to measure and to be able to know that it is sort of working along the way. So I do see why it's something that we can default to in the industry, definitely, especially when you've got that demand for the leads. I think another thing is that we often, and again, more generally in like B2B marketing, but in recruitment marketing as well, as I think we use the term lead when we're not actually talking about a lead in a lot of cases.
And lead's got to have some idea that they've got to have a problem to solve that you can solve, right? And they're talking to you. It's not a lead if it's an email address.
It's like it's a contact up until it's a lead, but because we're being pressured to drive leads, sometimes we might spin it ourselves that we've got all of these leads when actually they've not expressed, they've not been qualified, they've not expressed an intent, and if you scored them properly against a model, they'd be scoring very low on that. So it's, are we talking
negligibly
about
above?
contacts?
It's negligibly, that's hard to say. It's marginally above picking a random person off LinkedIn and giving them a call.
Exactly.
Which you won't class as a lead. So flip that around then, and you might have something good here because you've got a lot of other industry experience. What's the one thing we're really missing? What are recruitment marketing is just failing to do, failing to tap into, failing to execute that you'd think, oh, why are we not doing more of this?
I think there's probably a few of those.
Too many.
It is, let's call it like a younger industry for marketing. A lot of recruiters are only in that, early phase of adopting marketing. So we don't have as advanced SEO across the industry, for example. Okay. And I think a lot of marketers are missing some tricks there in terms of picking up the website traffic. But then again, back to what we spoke about earlier, which is plotting out the journeys for customers and for prospects and for candidates, and actually integrating ourselves into those journeys more and becoming an active part of their lives and their experiences at work, moving away from the narrow view of the cold calling and the cold prospecting, and trying to build journeys that work based on what they need in terms of like what will support them throughout, navigating a career change or considering navigating a career change, and what's going to support a leader when they are, at the point of questioning how they're going to build out their own function, and really trying to step into their lives as much as we can to fulfill more than just the hiring of a role for them, but to be true strategic.
We're far advisors. Too top of funnel. We're far too top of the funnel. We do all this stuff to create noise and maybe get website applications, but then marketing stops. You might have some internal stuff, or I've got a client who's asked me to come for a meeting, can you help me with a proposal or a slide deck or whatever, but that is like minor in the grand scheme of a recruitment marketer, whereas we're doing all this stuff up here, but then we don't play a part. I think the sales handover needs to be more of a gradual relationship nurture. So I think you're right. Actually map out what you want your clients to do, and see how you can help push them towards being an actual lead.
Yeah, and looking at the reality of what the journeys are like at the minute. So it can be a bit of a hard conversation, but if you get your CRM up and you pick sort of 10 contacts at random, half clients, half candidates, and you look back at their sort of log of outreach that they've had, actually sort of get up that timeline and show the salespeople, like, look, over the last 5 years, we've been in contact with this one individual maybe like 15 times, and it's always been, a very similar message, let's say, or it's been, what could be termed as like a bombardment, or, something that could give across a bit of a negative perception about our brand, and comparing that with what you think the ideal gold standard kind of journey could be, and trying to put yourselves in their shoes. Because it's always going to be a challenge in any kind of cold calling B2B sales environment, but definitely in recruitment, when you've got, when you're contacting people as candidates, when you're sort of chasing them for those jobs as well, the journey that you're putting out there can actually be detrimental in a lot of cases. So rather than just 100%. Sort of neither here nor there, you're actually causing them to be actively put off of your brand in the worst cases. So for me, that's where it has to start. Like, you have to map out your journeys, you have to get to grips with what your candidates want from you, what your clients want from you, and how you can improve that. It doesn't have to be all at once, but sort of working on gradual improvements to that journey and getting the buy-in from the salespeople to understand why it matters as well.
Yeah, that map, right? The advice you've just given is, you could actually map it, say all the things we're currently doing, and the quickest win is, what should we stop?
Yeah.
Because it's pissing people off. So get that. It's about transparency, isn't it? I think that's not just our industry. A lot of businesses do what they do. They've done it all the time. They don't actually know the nitty-gritty of what the customer is seeing and what impression they're building. But if you put a level of transparency across it, straight away common sense will prevail. Did we know we were doing that? No. Well, we can all agree, let's stop doing that. Okay, we spoke for 54 minutes. I think it's flown by for me because you've provided such a great level of insight. I've only got a few more questions, and there are nice little quick fire ones to wrap things up. So first one, and this applies across your life, so whether work or not, what's a technology that you couldn't live without?
Thing that comes to my mind instantly is something I use for work, like every day, and it's percentagecalculator.com, if you can call that a piece of technology.
Wow. That's incredible. I use that all the time, but I'd have never had it front of mind.
Yeah.
I'd never had it. So the one that gives you the 3 different ways of doing something, if this number, what percentage is of it, or what is X%. I use it all the time,
Every day. I use that multiple times a day. I'm probably their biggest visitor to that website. Yeah.
Now they've got SEO right. They've been the top of that
and they're
search
making some
result.
money from their ads. Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, yeah. Genius. You've probably just added a few quid there as well for listeners who've been using Excel formulas when you can just get an answer straight away.
Absolutely. No need for a calculator. Yeah, just visit that website.
Well, that's incredible. You can't class that as a brand. So second question is, what's your favourite brand?
I think I'm probably going to be quite basic, but I don't obviously like Coca-Cola, you have to admire what they've done. And I always think about I don't know if you watched Mad Men, but when they build up to that Coca-Cola storyline at the end of it and their hilltop singing, I love that.
I think that's a good point to raise, actually. Anyone who's not watched Mad Men, who's in marketing, is basically the best textbook you could ever read on how our industry evolved, why marketing is not just advertising, and it's just an incredible series. So it's a good research topic. But Coca-Cola, I mean, as a brand, we come across it every day, don't we? There's not many, ultimately, drinks brands that you... If someone said name a drinks brand, it's always going to be
I think it's just how so ingrained, everywhere in the world you see Coca-Cola, and I think you can't really achieve much more than what they've done with that brand.
No.
So it's a bit basic in a way. But yeah, it has to be the big player.
They turned Father Christmas red. So if you can achieve that, you've done all right as a brand. Again, flipping that one on its head, what's your least favourite brand? What brand really annoys you?
I think this is a very hated brand, although I think maybe they've improved a little bit. So I'm going to say Every, or maybe their former brand, which was Hermes, the delivery company. Obviously they changed it because they were so hated, and everyone had such negative connotations with that brand, they had to change their brand name. And I think even still after that, it's carried through, and I'm still, if I see that my parcel's being delivered by Every, I'm like, uh-oh.
I can't stand the logo, the different fonts, and there's just
messy.
Nothing appealing about it. They even kept the same colour as Hermes, right? So they didn't. Everyone knows. So they didn't do a good job.
They're changing it because they're so bad. So it's
and they didn't improve the service. They'd be better off sticking the same but improving the service, and then people would go, they turned it around, didn't they? Rather than just call it something else and still be shit. Which brings me nicely onto your favourite swear word.
Shit is quite a good one, because it's, you can use it in so many different work contexts.
You can emphasize it. It's not overly offensive. It's not shit.
Yeah, I think.
Okay. I've really enjoyed that. Thank you so much for giving up an hour of your time. From everything you've said, you are going to be an extremely busy person. I'm really glad that you're appreciating TLM. And you've become a massive contributor by recording this episode. So thank you very much. I look forward to publishing it.
Thank you for the opportunity. I think it's just good for us to all share, our collective experiences, the things we go through, and to know that we're not alone. So, thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you for listening to the Lonely Marketers podcast. If you would like to join like-minded recruitment marketers in our WhatsApp group, visit the LinkedIn page and scan the QR code in the banner. This podcast is created by the team at Pager. For more information about how Pager can help build personal brands for your recruiters and scale your content distribution efforts, visit pager.co. PAIGER.co. You can find me on LinkedIn if you'd like to connect for more content about recruitment marketing.